Have you ever dreamed of living la dolce vita and calling Italy your home? Today, we show you exactly how to do just that. We sit down with Michele Capecchi, aka the Italian legal whisperer, to talk about moving to Italy. If you ever thought I should move to Italy because of your Italian roots or just because of your love of pasta, Michele has the answer for you. We're breaking down the visa process, sharing money and time-saving tips, and exploring all the different visa options. And spoiler alert, you don't have to have Italian roots to move to Italy. So grab an espresso or a cappuccino and let's get into it. If you're enjoying this podcast, please be sure to like and subscribe this wherever you're listening to it. You can also give us up to a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. That's the easiest and free way to support this podcast. So I guess let's start with the dreamer who's out there. What options do you have for someone who's thinking, you know what, I want to go spend like a year in Italy. What options do they have?
Oh, many options, like taking into consideration that one of the most basic rules that sometimes is not really completely understood is that if you're coming from outside of European Union, and so if you don't have a European Union passport, you have a rule based on which you can stay inside the European Union territory. So not only Italy, France, Spain, like so the European Union, no more than 90 days out of 120 180 days period. So basically 3 months in, 3 months out. And it's not only related to Italy, it's related to anywhere in Europe. So it's not that if I stay 3 months in Italy, then I spend, I don't know, some time in Germany or in France, I recharge my 90 days period. And not even if I leave, if I go to England or go to, I don't know, Morocco, for a week, I recharge my 90 days period. No, if it's 90 days are over, then you have to stay outside of the European Union for 90 days. So obviously that becomes a lot of, creates a lot of limitation for a lot of people that would like to be here longer. There's another I'm telling you all the things that should not be done before telling you what needs to be done. But if I buy a property, I want to invest in real estate market here, do I get automatically a visa to stay here in Italy? Another big misconception because it's not true. So there are a lot of things that people probably in good faith, based on information that sometimes are passed throughout the internet and our misunderstanding of some of the things that you can read, they think they can do. The bottom line is, if you want to stay here for more than 90 days continuously, we need to work on getting a visa from the Italian consulate of the place where you currently residing. So the visa, which is the piece of the sticker that will get attached to your passport and allowing you to enter and stay in Italy more than 90 days, it's not something you can get when you're in Italy. You need to apply for it when you are in your home country. And what are the options? Well, there are working options, studying options, and non-working options. So we have several opportunities. Obviously, one of the things that are very, very often used are it's like I'm coming as a student. But again, seems simple. Say, well, I'm going to study Italian for 4 months, 5 months. Why not? Now, the Italian consular are getting very picky, correctly probably, about that because they understood that a lot of people try and pretend to have a study program, but maybe because of their age, because they are already professional career, they are older than a typical student, they don't really look like students. And at that point said, what's your background? Why do you want to come to study in Italy? And is there something you can study in your home country? So studying is much less a simple venue or route that could have been used compared to. So now we are into the realm of the working visa. Working visa is a typical, either if you have an Italian company that offers you a job opportunity, very rare to happen because Italian companies are like American companies. They are not in a position very often of sponsoring a visa. If you are here with a visa, fine, but it doesn't really work. So we are very often concentrated on helping people to get a self-employment visa, which means I have skills, I have a background, I can use that from wherever I want because my type of job is non-regulated business. I can do that. I don't need a license. I don't need a permission to do my, life coaching activity, my marketing strategies, or digital designer. So a lot of jobs that don't need a specific recognition of your title to be done here in Italy. So we have the part of people trying to get here, and we're helping them. One of the most common way that we are using is through the self-employment visa. Recently, over the past 6 months, it started becoming more popular to have the remote working visa, also known as the digital nomad visa. Italy finally introduced the rules, the implementing rules that we were missing. We've been talking about this type of visa for a couple of years, and now in Italy, and now finally starting from June of this year, of 2024, we were able to start helping people basically by showing that they have highly qualification in either academic, from academic perspective, so either a college degree or higher, or from their professional background, so not entry level position, but people that are already in a more like higher rank of of, of the job or position that they are having, we're able to show numbers of elements related to their income, their ability to work remotely, the past 6 months experience as a remote worker. We're able to help them to secure their presence through a digital nomad, either employed or self-employed. Very popular, for instance, for all those IT people that, especially during COVID, we had people from General Electric or from, I don't know, Microsoft, from Facebook, able to work really from wherever they want, but their company was not present in Italy. So now with the digital work as digital worker, they keep on working with their regional employer without having to change the structure of their agreement with the company. And then we have the, let's say, non-working visa, two of which, the most important ones, the one that we love to talk about with our clients, are the so-called elective residency visa, which is a visa for people that can afford to live in Italy based on their passive income. Passive income is any form of income that you receive regularly, so not saving, saving doesn't count, but fresh cash enters into your bank account regularly through typical pension, uh, annuities, or rents of apartment that belongs to you. You're owner of a company where you don't need to clock in every day because maybe just you own a restaurant, you own a gym, so you get your dividend at the end of every month just because you're the owner of the business. And that is another great form of entry visa, let's say, because a lot of people are in a position where they're, because of their age or because of the way they have structured their personal assets, they can stay here in Italy without need of being actively working. And then we have one of the things that we love to talk the most, which is the investor visa. The Italian investor visa is also known as the golden visa. It's becoming extremely popular. Obviously, you need to have some saving to take into account, but basically by making substantial investment into the stock market here in Italy, so choosing a title into the stock market, let's say Ferrari or Moncler, who doesn't like to have some stocks of Ferrari portfolio? Making a substantial investment is a half a million, so 500,000 euro of an investment. You can secure for yourself and for your partner um, a visa that allows you to stay in Italy and allows you also, if you want, you can also work. But it's not essential for this kind of visa. So this is kind of in between the working and non-working visa. And it's extremely popular nowadays.
And now a word from one of our sponsors. The golden visa, you only need 500 million or 500,000.
500,000.
And then you have the other one, the non-working, where basically you're living off some great retirement. And then the digital ones you were talking about. Were there two different digital ones? That there was the working and non, or you have remote work and
It depends on the way your activity is structured. You can be a freelancer, so you can be a digital nomad. So they have the change. It's kind of a semantic, to be honest, because the concept is the same. But one side, we have a person that is kind of you, like you have your online consulting business, and you have clients. So that in that case, we talk about the digital nomad. So a person who is offering his consultation services or your activities, like whatever you can do remotely, to a variety of possible clients, and therefore you're not employed by any of them. They are your clients. You invoice them for the activity you provide, and for which they pay you. If you have a company, so if you are employed by an American company, let's say, or a company anywhere based, not that say American, but and that company is willing to let you work remotely because the kind of structure of your business collaboration with them doesn't need you to clock in, clock out, and so you can be whatever you want. In that case, it's called remote work. So, but again, we're just talking about the same concept of having to show that you've been receiving a salary in case of remote worker, or your invoices in case of your clients, that you've done it numbers of months. So, for instance, the place where your company is based compared to where your office or your home is based, the fact that you're invoicing clients from different parts of the country. So there are different ways to show that you have done remote work at least 6 months prior to your application for this type of visa.
And is there a minimum income requirement for those two different visas?
It's around for let's say remote digital. I say digital nomad visa, but we're referring to the two types. It's a 30,000 euro per dollars. It's a 29. Let's say 30,000 euro to be round numbers per year.
And now, is that per person, or can I bring my spouse with me or my children? How does that work?
That's a very interesting question, and it's a little bit controversial because, as I said, it's very new type of visa. So I don't feel like giving a clear black and white answer. I read information and guidelines provided by some of Italian consulate. Just to give you an understanding, the rules provided by the lawmakers are kind of very generic rules, and then there require some implementing rules, and then there are the policies inside each consulate. Even if the consulate within obviously United States, they are coordinating, they are perfectly harmonized, and they're working together. When then you're dealing with a specific consulate, you understand that sometimes even two officers working inside the same consulate can have a slightly different approach to a given answer. Obviously, they refer to a same chief visa officer, so chances that things are different, maybe they're not so common. But if the chief changes, so over the year there are two different persons covering the same role of chief visa officer in a consulate, some interpretation of the rules can change. So we're now looking over these initial 6 months of application of this visa, and we see that not all the consulates are providing the same list of documents and same information regarding spouse. In principle, this is a visa that allows to bring your spouse with you and children, of course. It's not really clear whether we need to pass through the typical family reunification process where you need to request a nulla osta from Italy in order to sponsor your husband, your wife, or your partner at the Italian consulate, or whether the partner comes with you basically with their passport alone, and they apply for a permit to stay when you are right here in Italy together with your spouse. This is one of those aspects that is not really clear yet. And in principle, yes, absolutely for your children, especially if they are minors. Minors are always connected to the application of their parents. For the spouse, we're still trying to define this a general standard that applies to every consulate.
I can just see and hear a lot of our listeners who are in a position where they can probably work from home and are probably now sitting here thinking, wait a second, this is an option. How much does it cost, and kind of like how long would it take? Let's say someone has a job, they're earning, let's just say 50,000 euros to clear that hurdle, and they can work from home. Yeah, what does it cost them, and what's the lead time to get this visa?
The timing depends on the whether we'll be using the academic background versus the professional background of a person. Using the academic background is a little more time consuming, in my opinion, because you need to obtain the transcript and the basically information about your college degree, your lower and higher education from the university you attended. You need to have those certificates legalized by the registrar of the university in front of a notary, get them apostilled, and then being validated by the Italian consulate having jurisdiction for that university in order to be recognized that that academic title is equivalent of an Italian laurea, which is the word for degree. So that's a preliminary step that can take a couple of months for working well, and very much depend on how much the university is collaborative. If they have a notary, they can notarize the signature, get apostille, and then most importantly, obtain the validation of the title through the university. On the side of the professional background, to prove that you're a highly skilled professional through the professional background is generally speaking easier if you are self-employed, because obviously once you have shown all the invoices, the collaboration agreements with your client, one is in Colorado, the other one is Florida, it's quite easy to show that you have been working remotely. And if we are in a situation where we need to rely on your company to provide a certificate, couple of declaration or an affidavit once that says that you've been working, you've covered in a certain role, so to confirm that you are not in an entry level position, but you're in a more admin role inside the company. So we need to have the collaboration of the company. That is one of the things that sometimes can be a little tricky. People that they have legal department that are not willing to write too much about their employees. So this, let's say that out of all the strategies we are trying to use for our clients, especially if we have a little bit of a time to organize our activity with them, is to suggest them to have budget around 6 months to plan and to determine what is the best and easiest route to get it done together.
So it sounds like, unfortunately, you can't have this. I picture a hardworking person at home going, I want to live in Italy, but I don't want to tell my company. And it sounds like they can't do that. Is that right?
If you don't have the collaboration of your company, you can, theoretically speaking, not reinvent or to lie, but obviously depends on how you are able to collaborate with your company. Maybe they're willing to enter in a self-employment agreement. So instead of being employed by your company, you start and say, listen, are you okay if we're working under a freelance agreement? Or are you okay if I don't clock in, clock out any longer? You wait for 6 months of collaboration being set under a new structure that is no more of employment but self-employment, and at that point you can rely. You don't need anymore the affidavit of your company, because at that point you have your invoices and you're able to show to your to the consulate that you've been working remotely as a freelancer.
So either way, there needs to be a serious paper trail.
There are definitely, in fact, like when these, one of the funny things is that when the digital nomad rules came out, a lot of people say, yeah, finally we can get our backpack and in 2 months we're going to be in Italy. I said, not really. Like, but again, we can try to work on a plan to bring you here sooner rather than later. Strangely enough, what I always say, like, people say, well, now that we have the digital nomad, that's perfect for us because, I have clients in America, maybe I will have also have clients in Italy. I can work for a lot of different, like most of the things I want to do in America, maybe in Italy will be even more well paid because they need people like me. There's no life coaching. There's no business coaching in Italy. So there is a very poor marketing strategies. So that maybe a typical freelance job fits better than a digital nomad. Freelance visa, even if online you can read a lot of things, oh, it's so hard to get. Like, we've been doing this for 15 years with no rejections, and it takes a little bit on more job on our side, but it's absolutely a way that you don't have to rely on an existing contract with the company. You rely on your skills and your background to show with a business plan that you have the ability to keep on working whatever you want, because again, your activity is not licensed, it's not registered, so it's something you can do from whatever you want. We need to collect the numbers of documents from the Chamber of Commerce. So there is more job on our side as a legal proxy of a client. But at the end of the day, we can really bring people here with a freelance visa in less than 3 months.
And what's the typical fee for this for someone who's going through this process?
It very much depends on where the people are also planning to establish their life. Because we are based in Florence, and we have obviously direct experience and a network of like people that we know in all the basic office where we need to collect the document. We are able to ensure that our clients in very limited amount of time, and also with a more like a budget of time that we can put in for our clients, we can secure the visa for them. If we need to work with them and they want to work in Sardinia or far away, where for us it's not easy or possible to travel to get and collect the document, we need to have a proxy that helps us with the collection of the document. Obviously changes being a single applicant versus two spouses that together they decide to apply for their respective work visa. That is, like I said, between us, much easier than applying for a family, for a spouse visa. If both the parties are professional, they have a business activity, helping them securing a visa together, it's easier. So let's say that we are between 4,000 and 6,000 euro altogether for an application, depending on the complexities and the peculiarity of the case.
Okay. And would that include all of the translations that are required?
Not very much translation
Yeah.
required for this process. For we're talking about visa. For the
Yeah.
visa,
For visas.
there is not very much need of getting document translated from my perspective. Never needed to translate anything. Maybe just the power of attorney, but we provide power of attorney for representing our clients already written in double language. So generally speaking, that's sufficient. We had a few times working with some immigration authorities uh, here and there in Italy, where for some reason they wanted, like in Turin, one time in Rome, one of the three times in Rome. So it really depends on who is the person on the other side. They wanted to have some document related to the marriage certificate of a couple or the last tax return to be translated. But it's very rare to have documents that need to be translated for a visa application.
Okay. And now I know in France there are it would be more difficult to apply to certain regions than others. Is that the same way in Italy, where maybe certain regions have a longer lead time or might cause more problems than others?
Uh, Same answer as I said before. I can, when they come to us and say how long it takes, how what does it cost, for us it's more predictable, also in terms of success rate, to complete an application ready to be filed at the Italian consulate in the home country of our clients if we're working with authorities that are in our range of action, let's say here in Tuscany, for the simple reason that, again, it's not something where we need to delegate or where we need to reinvent the wheel, speaking with, I don't know, Chamber of Commerce or the labor desk or immigration office, where they don't know who we are and sometimes they don't know the process. It happened a few times that we needed to collect some document for a freelance application in some area, and I'm not talking rural area. I'm talking about like one of a province, in the south, in even area. One time in the south, one time on the north of Italy, where when we were trying to explain that Article 26 of immigration law about self-employment, they look at me like if I was speaking a different language. I was speaking in Italian, obviously, with them because we don't know what you're talking about. So okay, so obviously, when you have to train these people and explain to them, maybe by showing what we have done in Florence, how it works, that is where there are sometimes problems also in terms of our clients. They say like, hey, how long is going to take that? I don't know. So what we're suggesting our client is if we want to have a nice job is keeping in mind that the place where you decide to apply for this for any kind of visa is related to one specific document that is your rental agreement or the property you own. So one of the documents that any type of visa requires be submitted at the consulate is the evidence that now the day that you go at the Italian consulate, not in 3 months when you arrive, but now you have already either a rental agreement in place or you already own a property in a given place. Having a rental agreement in place doesn't mean that you need to be already paying a rent. It means that you have signed an agreement. Now it's the 11th of February, just to say, and we have a contract that starts on 1st of June. That's okay. That means that you go to the consulate showing that you have booked and you have paid a deposit for a rental agreement for an apartment that you're renting from June 1st, so that during the time, obviously, that you're waiting for the visa, you're not paying the rent. But we need to show that we have a place. The place that you choose for your stay is the place that determines the jurisdiction for some of the document that we need to collect. So what we're saying is, let's choose first where you want to stay, and based on where you are planning to stay, we will tell you more or less whether that immigration authority or chamber of commerce where we will need to collect some of the documents that are relevant for your application is more friendly or not, or it makes sense maybe to stay here nearby Florence, where we can definitely offer an outstanding support. You arrive in Italy, you start your process, you get your first permit to stay here in Florence, but 7 months later, when you have your permit to stay, 8 months later, when you arrive in Italy, you have your permit to stay in your hand, you're free to go. So we're not asking people to commit to stay in Florence or in this part of Italy for years to come. It's just a matter of securing the initial document, the initial permesso di soggiorno, and then decide to go ahead with their life, whatever they want.
And now a quick break for our sponsors.
When it comes to buying property, there's some famous reels that have popped up about how you can buy, a house in Italy for $1. Do you have any insight, or I can see you, I can see the body energy changing. What are your thoughts on that? Do you have any experience with it, or is it true?
In principle, I wrote an article like on my website. Like I have an interesting article about €1 house, where I try to summarize some of the experience of this year. In principle, is not a scam. I cannot say that I'm. It's possible that among these different kind of advertising, there is also someone who is taking advantage of it for some scam. But in principle, it is true that at some point, some regions or some cities, some municipalities, especially in more rural area, or very often are like either countryside or more mountains region or more isolated areas, villages that are getting completely abandoned by population to the point that there are properties that originally belong to someone are abandoned, and they are getting in a situation where they need massive renovation, and the municipality doesn't want to take care of it, and sometimes they don't have the budget to take care of it. So what they're saying is, come, we allow you to buy for a symbolic euro, €1, so that there is a consideration for the money for the property that you're buying, and by doing that, you potentially have a place to stay. What is less known and less understood, again, assuming that these are real uh, advertising or real tenders that some municipalities provide. So my recommendation is don't rely on what you find. If there is a municipality, I just say like one small comune in the south of Italy that is promoting, try to go on their website. So not on third parties' website. If it's something that belongs, if it's €1 house, it's not a private deal. It's something that is done with the help of municipality. So on the website, official website of that municipality, you should find information about that. Number one. Number two, what is not understood, in my opinion, underestimated at some point, is the consequence and ramification of buying a house in an area that is very often, at least the cases that we happen to handle, we're talking about probably 10, 15 cases that came to us not just for consideration, but people are seriously interested in placing an offer with surveys and different kind of estimate of the cost. What is not really understood that is that if you are in an area that is not particularly open to work with people that don't speak Italian, you first find a language and a cultural barrier that is very important to handle. Most importantly, you face a property that needs to be sometime completely torn down and rebuilt from scratch. And rebuilding a property or making a property livable, very often, we're talking about 1,500 to 2,000 euro per square meter. If we're talking about 100 square meter, which is 1,000 square feet of a house, we're already talking about 150,000 euro. 150,000 euro for an apartment. If you come here in Tuscany, if you go in Gaiola in Chianti, in Rada in Chianti, in the Chianti area of our wine area. But if you want to go in the south of Italy, if you go up on the lake area near the Dolomites, with 150,000 euro, maybe you don't find like your penthouse apartment, but you can definitely find an apartment where you can have a place to stay that very often is already in excellent shape. We help a lot of people to buy a property for 150,000 euro that are ready to move in. So I understand that the Under the Tuscan Sun dream of buying four walls without a roof and restoring it from scratch is incredibly romantic and beautiful. Is a challenge that more than one time, actually all the times that we handle this kind of situation, after the moment of romanticism and falling in love with the idea of doing that, a more pragmatic person understand that is it really worth it? Is it really possible? Without considering another aspect. That's where the lawyer can comes in and say, in addition to that, most of these comuni say, come and you commit to establish your residency. So you need to become a permanent resident. But as for what I know, there is no agreement with immigration and consulate authorities that if you buy a property for €1, we don't have a €1 visa to stay here in Italy. So now you're buying a property, you're committing to stay there, to renovate it, but you still have to pass through the process of getting a visa that allows you to stay here in Italy. So it is a beautiful opportunity, can be a dream. It depends what you're looking for.
If you
Okay.
have the time and
Yeah.
money and patience.
Yes, yes.
So there are other easier potentially options.
Again, I respect completely those people say like, I can't wait to be there and building with my hands. Like you cannot do that.
Right.
How in Italy you go in jail if you try to restore a house with your hands from scratch. You can do some little jobbing works inside, but you can't do by yourself. So if you're a big dreamer and building something, maybe you have in your background because you come from a family of builders and you see opportunities to invest in a more scalable way in some rural area. Why not? That's absolutely doable, and often it's possible. It depends on what's your long term plan.
Okay.
So there are definitely a lot of options for people that are not Italian to come to Italy and live there and seek la dolce vita, right? But what about the people that do have Italian ancestry? That opens up a whole other can of worms. Now, I went through the process of getting my Italian citizenship through my ancestry, and it was a long process. We got it. We're here, but it was a long process. So, what would you say to the, Italian American that said, "Oh, well, my grandparents came over or my great grandparents came over. Is this a possibility for them?" And I know there's a lot of nuance here
This
and
is
rules.
the one from the followers, or is
No,
this a
this
different?
is just a general,
Oh, okay.
overall rule, and then there's or question, and then there's other ones
Okay.
through there.
Uh, I say something that probably is obvious, but as I was telling you before, we're getting online. Nothing is obvious when we're talking about that. Sometimes people are approaching for the first time. Uh, Italy is among European Union countries one of the most, I would say, generous in terms of allowing people to recover their Italian citizenship if they come from a family where there was a grandfather, a great grandfather, great grandmother with an Italian origin. In other words, uh, the Italian citizenship is passed by the blood. Basically, if you're the son, then generation later, grandson or great grandson or great granddaughter of an Italian person, you are automatically Italian simply because you received the blood from this person. There is one. There are only a couple of limits as for what we are talking about now. Now we can enter in the complications that are emerging recently. The two limits are that you can go backward up to 1861, which is when Italy became a country. So before then, we were just numbers of different territories, but we are not a nation. And we need that the first or last Italian-born member of a family who left Italy to go abroad must have been living in Italy by the time Italy became a nation. A second rule is that we need to be sure when that person, man or woman, who left Italy to go abroad, decided to relinquish his Italian citizenship to become American, Canadian, Brazilian, whatever. Because obviously the line of blood must remain uninterrupted up to the current applicant. And to do that, we need to be sure that the birth of a first born abroad child of that Italian person, that child must have born when the father and the mother were still Italian. If they already lost their Italian citizenship, obviously the line of blood is or at that point is interrupted. One of the nuances that came out over the past year, so in 2024, as a consequence of the Supreme Court decision, known to the public as a minor issue, is that until a year ago, and for many years, till 1 year ago, it was taken for granted almost, but it was a very general accepted rule that a minor born abroad to Italian parents didn't suffer the consequence of a naturalization of the parents if the child was already born. So at that point, I am born in the United States. I have my American citizen, given to the fact that I was born on American territory, but I'm also Italian because I'm born to Italian parents. If my parents lost their Italian citizenship when I was already born, their renunciation, their the giving up of the Italian citizenship to become American didn't affect my status. I retained my Italian citizenship would be preserved regardless of naturalization of my parents. That's a rule that was applied for decades until a year ago. The Supreme Court said that principle cannot be applied, that rule is not correct. We cannot have a baby born abroad with Italian parents that even if he is already an American citizen, he cannot keep the Italian citizenship if the parents decided to lose or renounce to their Italian citizenship. So basically, the Supreme Court doesn't look at what the kid has to gain from the naturalization of the parents, but look at what the kids could lose in terms of status if the parents decide to naturalize. So that was a big problem that affected a lot of applications pending in front of consulates and municipalities, and is becoming one of the main problems that people come to us because the thing is that the Supreme Court decision in Italy, the Supreme Court rules in general, don't have the same binding effect as the rules of the Supreme Court in the United States. Supreme Court ruling in Italy are considered persuasive precedents that are expected to be used by the current judges who are applying the law for their specific case. But if the judge believes that that case doesn't go under the umbrella of the interpretation of the Supreme Court, cannot apply that principle of the Supreme Court. And what is coming out is that a lot of courts are not fully agreement. We have several cases decided by the Supreme Court by local judges that didn't apply this principle of the Supreme Court. But we are now getting in a very specific subject that maybe a kind of a little more boring than other things. I think that the most important message to provide is that it is possible if you have in your family someone that was born in Italy up to, let's say, 150 years ago, we can help you to reconnect the dots of your family line with birth, marriage, and death certificate, starting from that last Italian born member of the family up to you. If we're able to prove that naturalization either didn't happen or happened under certain conditions, we might be able to show that the line of blood is uninterrupted. Therefore, we can help these people to recover their Italian citizenship.
So I think Colette has talked about it, but I just want to reiterate it that Colette went through this process because actually both of her great grandparents lived in Italy. So your great grandparents came over, and I know that you're very familiar with this, but this is more just for our listeners. And Colette was able to show the proof and go through this process and get her Italian citizenship. One of the things that we get from a lot of people once we kind of share this story, or we hear kind of through some of our posts, is the idea that, oh, I took a 23andMe, a genetic test, and it says that I'm 60% Italian. I should be able to get my Italian citizenship. Maybe, but not through the test. As Michele just shared, you have to prove back that you have a connection through your grandparents or great-grandparents. And so there's what you're saying, what you just mentioned is it's not necessarily like a 3 generations or 4 generations. You said, maybe up to 150 years back. Is there any like hard cutoff if it's a great-great-grandparent?
No, again, we had cases of people that were born in Italy in 1850s and 1960s. So we have cases of like 4 or 5 generations of uninterrupted line of blood. What are the most common situations that we can find in terms of bumps on the road is whether to find some vital record documentation, so finding birth and marriage certificate to show that a child was the son of those 2 persons by proving that that couple was married. So marriage certificate are essential piece of this information to show the line of blood connecting those 2 people to the next generation. And we're talking about documents that obviously come from these huge dusty books that sometimes it looks like getting into this archive, like Harry Potter style, and super dusty. And you need to find the ledger copies of documentation. Sometimes the municipality's office, the archive, got burned, got like flooded. So many things can happen, and sometimes they don't exist. But not only about Italian documents. Like I have to say that very often, with the fact that we have churches, we have a backup copy of most of the birth records are part of the having baptismal certificates in churches that helps to cover the document that we need in Italy. Very often is a problem of finding documents starting from 1890 from some counties in the United States where very rural area where it was very hard to find those kind of documents. So one of the unpredictability of this type of application is we start very well, we get the initial documents, and then when we start collecting very old document, more than 100 years old document, it happens that no document exists. So what can we do in that case? We can go to the court. We can ask an affidavit of a judge declaring that is unquestioned whether the child is a son of a woman and a man. But so there are tricks we can try to use, but there are several things that can happen when we are dealing with documents that are so old.
And this is why having an attorney, I think, is so important during this process because there are so many hurdles that we come across. Name discrepancies, that was a big one. Not being able to find certain documents and sourcing that from the United States or from where you're living can be really challenging. So I unfortunately did not know Michele going through my experience at the time, but I did use a different attorney and they were instrumental in helping me find all of these documents and translate all of these documents. And it was a very long process, but it would have been so much longer if I tried to do it on my own.
It's and one of the most common frustration is that even if you have followed all the rules that you think that you're respecting by following the roadmaps, very often provided even by the official authorities, there is always that little thing like you think that I have to say now better than before because now even consulate provide very thorough guidelines. Until some years ago was not so clear the kind of documentation that needed to be collected. So people were coming to us in tears because either they got rejected or after 3 years of waiting, they were missing documents. And because they didn't have that document, they were put on hold and then they had to wait another couple of years before being able to go to the consulates or to go to the municipality because maybe you have to wait for a USCIS document and it takes a year to get some of these documents. So there are things that if we know, we start with the right foot. If we know, if we start working together from day one, chances that by the time that we apply, the application is really complete because we have covered really not only all the bases in terms of the list of documents, but the experience helps us also to predict some questions that could be raised by an officer, maybe not written in the list of the documents. Sometimes it's not written that we need that document. Believe me, you need that document. And very
Yeah.
oh, thank God that we got it. Like, yes, otherwise we have to wait 6 more months before being able to have another appointment. So
And
it's
I
good.
think some important things to talk about for the listeners at home is that in the differences between, a visa and the citizenship. With citizenship, someone can have access then to live, work, or study in any of the EU member states, not just in Italy. So it really opens up a world of opportunity. And another great thing is that your minor children get citizenship. So, for example, I was able to get citizenship. So our daughter has citizenship. And then when our son is born in 2 months, I will go through the process of getting him his citizenship and passport. So there's a world of opportunity that opens at this point. And I think that's really important to share.
There are absolutely, it's countless. Some people, I want to say something because one of the very common questions that we have at the very beginning of our meetings with our clients is like, will I have to file taxes in Italy? It is a very common question that we hear every time. Also, when it's about buying property, and the answer is basically the same. Italy doesn't. You are not liable to file your taxes in Italy because you are an Italian citizen or because you own a property. Your tax liability comes from the fact that you are living in Italy. So, an Italian uh, passport holder, so an Italian citizen who lives in his home country and he gets registered in the so-called AIRE, which is the anagraphy, is the register of Italians who live abroad through the Italian consulate. So if you're registered as an Italian who lives abroad and you don't have any business, you don't have any property in Italy, there is no tax liability for an Italian citizen who lives abroad. Italy expects you to file and report your worldwide income only because you live in Italy. Italy, like the majority of the countries, to be honest, in Europe, are basing their tax liability on the fact that you live in a country, not the fact that you are a citizen. If you are not an Italian, but you live in Italy, you have, or if you spend the majority of the year in Italy, you have to file your taxes in Italy, with few exceptions, but that's basically the general principle. If you are an Italian who lives abroad, you don't have to file taxes in Italy unless you have business activity or if you have a property. But even a foreigner who has a property in Italy needs to pay property taxes on the property they have. So it's not related to citizenship.
Yes, that's important to share too.
Should we talk about some of the questions we got?
I have one
Okay.
more question to talk about before we get into our community questions. Now, I went through the process of obtaining my Italian citizenship from the United States. I went through the New York consulate. However, one of my dear friends went to Italy to obtain her Italian citizenship. Can you share what that process is like for, say, to make it simple, a US citizen to either apply from the US or can they fly to Italy and apply from the consulates there?
And she had, I don't know if you mentioned it, she had hair, her
She did have
your similar
citizenship.
situation. Yeah, her
Yeah.
great
Or
grandparents lived
ancestry.
there.
The principle is that I'm leaving at the end of this question a reference to a so-called 1948 exception, which is related to women, like your line of blood passing through a woman. I'm leaving it there because it's doesn't fit with your answer, with your question, but it's important to mention it. So a typical situation where your great grandfather, your father, and up to you. So we are using the paternal side of a family. Let's put it this way. You have two options. You need to submit all the documents, the one we were talking about, birth, marriage, death certificate, starting from the last Italian-born member of a family up to you, in front of the Italian competent authority and having jurisdiction for the place where you're living. So basically, if you're living in the United States, the jurisdiction is represented by the Italian consulate of the place where you're staying. There are Italian consulates spread out through your entire country. Depending on the region, the state where you are, there is an Italian consulate that is as reference and jurisdiction for your case. So that's the place where you should go to submit your paperwork in order to get the authority of the consulate recognize that there is an interrupted line of blood and therefore the citizenship has been passed through the generations. Option B, you have the possibility to do the same things by moving your permanent domicile and residency in Italy for an amount of time that is equal to the duration of this administrative process. So in other words, let's say that you would like to take a sabbatical year or in a position of relocating because maybe you can work remotely or in a pension age where you don't need to work anymore. A lot of people take their beautiful set of documents that we've been working together, all legalized, all translated, be translated depending on the situation, and we help them choose where they would like to stay. And in this case, it can really be any place between the Dolomites up all the way down to Sardinia and Calabria and Sicily, whatever they want. Again, we suggest to stay around Tuscany for the simple fact that we can be physically there every time there is a need at the comune.
And because Tuscany is amazing.
And so basically, you have all the documents. As an American citizen who is applying to recover your Italian citizenship, we have a rule that allows you, applicant, and the other members of a family that would be beneficiary of the same application, to come here as an American with an American passport without the need of a visa. So, oh my God, I need to get a visa to stay in Italy. One of a few exceptions we have is if you're coming in Italy with the document ready to go, not while you're collecting the document, because otherwise you're stuck with the 3 months period that we were talking about at the beginning, but you're coming with your full set of documents, reviewed properly, all legalized. We check them together, say, okay, you're ready to go. You're coming here in Italy. You find a place you like, so a place to rent. You have a place, a family house of people that can host you. Must be a real place. We're not talking about a PO box. We're not talking about a place where you stay for 2 weeks and then you leave, but an actual rentable place where you can stay with your family, members of the same application. By doing that, you go at the municipality, you show rental agreement or hospitality agreement or the ownership deed of the property that belongs to you and say, these are my documents. I want to apply here because I come from an Italian family. What, generally speaking, the Comune does is recognize and acknowledge that you are in the process of you're submitting an application to become and recognize your Italian citizenship. They give you a receipt, a piece of paper that shows that acknowledging that you are there in Italy for the submission of this document. And with that document, we can apply at the immigration office, the local immigration office of the place where you're staying, for a permit to stay named attesa cittadinanza, waiting for citizenship. Basically, you are entitled to receive a permit to stay, so the equivalent of your permesso di soggiorno, a green card, let's say, that allows you to remain in Italy throughout the process that the municipality can take to review your application. There are some comuni, some municipalities, especially the smaller villages, that are able to process this kind of application in matters of 3-4 months. In bigger cities, like in Florence, we are currently around 10-11 months. You go northern Italy, it can be sometimes longer, sometimes shorter. So there is not a rule based on the latitude. It's just a matter of the workload that sometimes these smaller community may be able to process. So during the time, again, you are allowed to be in Italy. Not only allowed, the rules says that you need to maintain your residency in Italy throughout the time of this application. So we highly we're against all those people that say, I'm coming, I'm clocking it, the police come to check that I'm residing in the apartment, and then I'm leaving until the process is done. Don't do that. Sometimes, very often, actually, police can do random check, ensure that the people that are claiming their residency, their domicile in that house, in that municipality, be sure that they're still doing there. Now, more than often before, this type of random control are done to be sure that the people actually staying there. If they don't find you, you start committing crime because you're basically lying to public authorities regarding whether you're staying or not, your application would be completely disqualified and you lose your possibility to get your Italian citizenship. So do that if you're ready to do it. You don't need to commit for life stay here in Italy. It's not that you have to stay in a house 24/7. If you need to travel back and forth to America for a limited amount of time, you can absolutely do that. But don't take it as I'm allowed to leave the country throughout the process and come back just when I'm informed that I'm Italian citizen.
That's super helpful to know.
Yeah, so I think she did it in what, 3 months?
She stayed longer.
But I mean, the to get her visa took about 3 months, and
she was in a small town in the South.
And it took you 3 years.
It took me 5 years.
5 years to do that. So
granted, I started in 2019. Then we had COVID. So my timing was tricky. I also moved from the Los Angeles consulate to the New York consulate. So there were a lot of...
It was extended.
Yeah.
You went for the director's cut. So we have some questions from our followers. And maybe you know this one better, so I'll have you ask this one about the 1948 ruling.
Yes, and you did mention
it already.
Before. So this is from a follower. Specifically regarding the descendant citizenship, can you talk about the 1948 ruling and how that dictates that the American descendant cannot go through the consulate but has to create a lawsuit in the Italian municipality where their ancestors were born?
And now a word from one of our sponsors.
This is fascinating. This is a fascinating story. I always love to talk about it. I actually said what you described, Colette, is accurate, and it's like the choice between municipality and consulate as venues for the application are correct as long as we're using a paternal line of blood. Why such a sexist, I think is a word, way of misogynist way of just a father? Because the Italian citizenship law dated 1912 that regulated the transmission of the blood provided back at the time in 1912 the only man could pass Italian citizenship. We don't need to use comments about that. Obviously, women didn't have, unless there are exceptions of a widow, unless there are specific exceptions, generally speaking, only men could pass Italian citizenship. Now, what happened is that after 1948, when this law was still in place, And the Italian Constitution, first Republican Italian Constitution, was enacted. Obviously, our Constitution is based on equality, same right to men and women. And our constitutional courts, so the judges appointed to review the laws that were existing before the Constitution was enacted, at some point later on in the 70s, we need to wait some years, noticed that we had a law that was very discriminatory. How is it possible, based on our Constitution, that grants same right to men and women, a woman is not treated like a man? Why only a man can pass Italian citizenship? What about the rights of a woman to pass Italian citizenship? So, starting from this interpretation of the Constitutional Court, all the cases involving kids born to an Italian woman after the Constitution was enacted became automatically permitted, so became possible, providing that the child was born to a woman, Italian woman, after 1948, to pass the Italian citizenship, and therefore the line of blood could be passed also to a woman. What happened before 1948? That was the main problem. Because what happened for all those cases that the Constitution cannot be applied retroactively, we can only use it for the future generations. So, through an interpretation provided by the Supreme Court, with a couple of decisions that came out only in 2009, so kind of recently actually, that clarified very confusing situation before that time, the Supreme Court basically stated that it is possible to apply the same principle also to women born before 1948, whose child were born before 1948, in order to guarantee equal treatment to two brothers, one born before 1948, the other one born after 1948. One can get Italian citizenship, the other cannot. Obviously, would not be possible. So basically, because these are interpretation of a Supreme Court that didn't change the law, the consulates and the municipality are still forced to apply the old rules, where only men can pass Italian citizenship. But thanks to the interpretation provided by the Supreme Court, it is now possible to people who are basing their Italian line of blood on women born before 1948, maybe women who arrived in the United States in the beginning of the past century, who had a child born in the 20s and the 30s, so before 1948, to have a judiciary, so to have a judge interpreting the rule, granting, recognizing that that woman was Italian, that that child received Italian citizenship through the mother, and therefore the line of blood continued up to today. We need to go to the court in these cases because, as I said, consulate and municipalities are not allowed to use any interpretation of the court. They need to use the law. Only through the interpretation, let's say the equity of the courts, it's possible to recognize to a woman the right to pass Italian citizenship. So every time that we are facing family where the line of blood is passed by a woman, to be honest with you, we are very happy for our clients for a reason I'm about to tell you, because those are 1948 cases. We're able to file the application for these people in front of the district court of the place where the Italian-born member of the family was born. The reason why we are very excited for our clients to do that is that what you did collect was an application where you applied for yourself. But according to the rules that there are now at the consulate, if you have three brothers living in different parts of the United States, each one of them need to be able to obtain an appointment at their respective consulate. They don't let family application be submitted. With an application filed in court under the umbrella of 1948, regardless of where your family is spread out, you have us as your legal proxy. There is one single application, one single set of documents. We apply for the whole family bundle in front of the court, and we get with one decision the recognition of the Italian citizenship for the whole family.
That's wonderful.
I'm curious if that would have worked for you.
Thorough answer. They did apply for,
As a
because
group?
my brother and sister and I did it together.
Okay, interesting. Okay, another question we had. A follower is moving to Florence for retirement in about 4.5 years, 4 to 5 years. They'd love to spend time learning about the culture, and they're curious about the student visa options. Even though they'll be retired, and they'd love to take classes in Italian. What does it take to qualify for a student visa? And is it different for a retiree than versus a young adult?
Unfortunately, the process to get a student visa is based on very often your academic background. So I'm I'm not quoting properly like the guidelines of a consulate, but as a fact, one of the common questions that the Italian consulate, and this is what our clients told us when they came to us saying, we got a rejection. Well, before becoming our clients. So they tried to get a visa as a student visa and they got rejected because one of the question is, what do you need to go to study in Italy? So, well, because we love language, we want to learn Italian in the place where the language is spoken. So, well, come for 3 months as a student, as a tourist. For 3 months, you can stay here. You want to study longer, study in your home country. There's an excellent Italian school behind the corner here. So, one of the most important questions that you need to be prepared to answer is, what do I need to do in Italy versus what I can do in my home country? What are my background in order to prove that my studies, academic studies, or sometimes my professional backgrounds requires me to do in-depth studies of the language or the art. It can be a school, something related to studying art or other things that you want to study. Why do you need to be in Italy? So you need to be prepared to explain that either from your academic perspective, because maybe you studied Italian in university, you want to get a higher level of education you cannot get there because you already know the basic, or because the language is required for your business. Maybe you are a wine importer and you need to learn technicalities of a language that cannot be learned with the course you do there. And there is a 6 months course only available in a given area of a given town. Obviously, this is add additional strength to your application because you are coming in Italy, not because you want to have an extended experience. So the biggest problem is to explain to people that a student visa is not a way to get around the 90 days limitation you have as a tourist. So if your goal is to enjoy the bella vita, either you respect the 90 days or you need to commit with a longer plan. And unfortunately, study is sometimes not the most appropriate way. I'm not saying it's not possible. It's a case by case scenario. And we have people that were very advanced in their studies in their age that got their study visa. It wasn't easy. And
Hmm.
with some warning before study because there were chances that because of the age of the person, the consulate could have questioned the real intention of a person to spend time, extended amount of time, 80 hours per month to 20 hours a week of courses required to be eligible for a course, for university or for a study course.
So then,
Interesting.
would you recommend a different visa for someone that wants to retire in Italy?
Talking about someone who is in a retirement age, probably the elective residency visa, which was previously known also as a retirement visa or a pension visa, is definitely like an option that can qualify, can be suitable option for a lot of people.
And that's interesting because I thought France had a much easier student visa, if I remember correctly. Wasn't it? Or am I wrong with
I
that?
don't know if it would be easier. I don't think
I
anything is easy.
I'm not saying it easy. I thought that when we were talking to Daniel, I thought that he recommended. I can't remember all the details, but I felt like it was an easier way to.
It was an
It
option
was an
for sure.
option. Yes.
Yes.
Um,
And then another question we have uh, is my Italian parents became Canadian citizens before I was born. Last time I tried to get Italian citizenship, I was told I no longer have blood ties. Is there a way around that, or can it change in the future?
Uh, we talk about the line of the citizenship through the line of blood. We didn't consider another couple of options available for people who will really want to get Italian citizenship. Number one, if you came to Italy, you came from Italy, so you were a minor at the time that your parents arrived in Canada. So, and you suffer the consequence of the naturalization of your parents because you are a minor, you are only Italian citizen, and you arrive with your parents. You can recover your Italian citizenship, which you lost as a consequence of someone else's decision, by making a declaration in front of a consulate where you declare that you want to get back your Italian citizenship now that dual citizenship is permitted. But Italy started allowing dual citizenship only in 1992. So obviously now it's possible to have dual citizen. So you can make a declaration at the consulate whereby you say, I'm planning to return to Italy, to stay in Italy, in that municipality, because I want to recover my Italian citizenship. By doing that, you make yourself eligible to come as say an American, but let's say with your national passport, you don't need a visa. You can register yourself in a municipality. And by doing that, more or less within a year from when you arrive, you can get back your Italian citizenship. Keep in mind that this is not a retroactive process. So it's not that you go back being Italian since you were a teenager, only from that point on. So it applies to you. If you have children that are under the age of 18, they can be with you and the benefit of the fact that they get a new status and new citizenship together with the parents. But that cannot be extended to them if um, if they're older than 18. They need to do it by themselves. Number one option. Number two options. Let's say that not your parents, your grandparents are the one who came from Italy and they lost the Italian citizenship. So the line of blood is uninterrupted. The Italian rules, again, how generous Italian regulation is in this respect, permit people by establishing a regular presence. In this case, you need to have a visa. So we need to work on a visa. And you stay in Italy for 3 continuous years, instead of 10 years, as normally happens in order to be eligible for naturalization to become an Italian citizenship based on residency. Only with 3 years of residency, if your parents or grandparents were Italians, regardless of their naturalization, you can get your citizenship. So again, it's a form of naturalization. So you don't get back from when you were born. You get it the moment that is recognized that you have been spending enough time here in Italy. But again, 3 years is better than 10 years, and sometimes faster than applying through a consulate. There is a limitation, obviously, because it's not something you can pass to older children, but it's something that if you are alone, if you just yourself care to get your Italian citizenship, or if you have minor children together with you, it's an alternative option you can take in consideration. Again, given that you have chosen a way to stay here in Italy legally, so we need to work on a visa first.
That's wonderful. Okay.
There's hope.
There
There's
is
hope
hope.
for
There's
everyone.
so much hope, whether you want to retire, whether you want to study, or if you want to get your citizenship. I mean, there's so many options.
So for Americans listening who now are inspired and they're starting to dream about, moving to Italy or living in Italy for a year, getting their citizenship, what's the first step that they should take, after they subscribe to this podcast and give it a nice review? And what's the first step they should take?
If it's just a dream because they read online, that they followed your podcast, falling in love obviously with your stories and etc. My first suggestion is to try to come here as a tourist, taking advantage of the 90 days period that they have, so that they can really familiarize with different locations, different places, try new things, find the perfect fit for their next step. Once they've done their, I would say, almost a due diligence from legal terms, so they've done a little bit of research, they figure out whether this is what they want to do and where to do that. My suggestion to get in touch with us before doing anything else, not because it's an essential. I would myself, even if I'm married to an American woman, if I come to America on a regular basis, I would never start either process to buy a property or to get in a foreign country just relying on what I can find online. And very often, I have to say, they are super reliable resources. But the same way I said, like I would never. I tried to fix the pipes of my bathroom one time by myself, and it cost me double to call a plumber and resolve the problems that I created in my own bathroom. So unfortunately, very often people come to us after having tried to get the things done by themselves, and it costs them much more than having started together, because again, the numbers of pitfalls behind buying a property or setting up your life or even acquiring citizenship just behind the corner. So it makes sense to try to start with the right foot.
Try it before you buy it.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. How can everyone find you? What's your website? What's the
My
easiest way to get a hold of
Is you can find my information on our website, which is Capecchi Legal. Maybe we can provide a link of
you? We will put a link in the description.
illegal.com. You can find our podcast that is just the beginning, but we start providing nice chat like the one we're having with you on the main platforms. So the main platform, like from Spotify, like all the platforms that everybody uses for podcasts, you can find us under the Italian Legal Whisperer, so which is our actual name of our podcast. And just Google my name, Michele Capecchi, on Google, and you'll find a lot of resources based on our articles, interviews, and other things that you can find online.
Well, grazie mille. This was so informative and helpful to all of those listeners out there dreaming of moving to Italy and living in Italy.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you're learning from and or enjoying this podcast, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Instagram and TikTok. These are great free ways to support this podcast. Also, please subscribe to this podcast on both Spotify and Apple. On both of those platforms, you can leave us up to a 5-star review, which would help us out greatly. Please also check out the sponsors mentioned in today's episode. That's the best way to support this show. If you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover, please put those in the comment sections in YouTube. And yes, we do read all the comments.